Like, I'm talking one of those tests where it's not just like, okay, hey, look, I'm going to study for this midterm or this final. It's one of those where you're like, okay, I'm going to read all my notes. I'm going to read my friend's notes. I'm going to read the cute girl next to me or guy's notes because they've got great handwriting and I got their number. I'm going to look up all the information I can find on this certain topic, like let's say discrete modeling, online. It's a math class. This is me in that math class, by the way. And I'm also going to basically say I'm going to read every single book on the subject because I want to do amazing on this test. Anybody had a test that's like that hard that you put so much effort into? Like, yeah, yeah. You got a 30 out of 30, right? 30 out of 30, right? Gosh. So my next question was, I'm not judging. I'm just shocked. That's all. I'm just shocked. So we study really hard for these tests, right? And like you go in, and I've had these tests before. Like I go in, and I'm like, I've studied really hard. I get in there, and I answer every single question, and I know for a fact, like, I just aced it, especially math tests. Like I knew exactly, like, okay, I memorized the problem, so I knew if I got something wrong, like what it was going to be. But usually, I knew exactly what my score was going to be because I did the math afterward. So I was like, yeah, I think it's going to be great. And then there are always those outliers, those random tests where you're like, look, I just destroyed this thing. That teacher has nothing on me. And then you get the test grade back, and you say, oh, what happened? And your teacher's just like, I don't know, but you didn't pass. Like, and you think to yourself, I didn't deserve this. I worked so hard. I studied so hard. Or maybe you cheated or whatever it might be, but you're like, look, I did not deserve it. Look, teacher, obviously you need to switch those numbers around because this is not the grade you meant to put down. Like, I know you got dyslexia. Like, that's not what you meant to do. We've all had those moments, right? Why? Because we feel like we deserve better. We feel like our efforts deserve some kind of reward. And we usually, in fact, you ever had a test? Now, let's be honest for a second. How many of y'all have ever had a test that you were not prepared for, but that you should? He put up two hands. You're homeschooled, man. What is that? But you're not prepared for, right? You show up for the test. You're like, all right, Lord, give me strength. Show me new and unknown things. That's actually biblical right there. So start praying that. Show me new and unknown things, Lord. And you take the test. You're like, Lord, give me strength. You get done. You're like, all right, God, if I fail this, my mom's going to have my backside. And then you get the test grade. You're like, praise God. You do exist. 100. Bam. You tell your mom, like, look how hard I studied. See? I am a smart child. Now, here's the thing. Hold on. You didn't deserve that grade. You didn't study it. I'll say we, because I've been in there before many times. We didn't deserve those grades. We didn't study hard. We probably didn't remember that we had a test. We just happened to show up for class if you're in college. And you're like, oh, test day? Thank you, Lord. Okay, you showed up and got that grade. But you don't complain when you do well in it, right? So, like, what would happen in our lives, what would our lives look like if we actually got what we deserved, like, all the time? What would happen in our lives if we always got what we deserved? What would our lives look like? Would it look good? Would it look bad? Somebody said the best. That means you must be doing some great things in the back. But I look at my life and think to myself, okay, I know some of the things that I do, some of the things I focus on, and what I get, if I got what I deserved, would it be great? Like, I'm seminary, right? So I write papers and I read stuff and all that, and usually it's not hard. It's not a challenge. The biggest challenge is actually going to class because it's 45 minutes away. But other than that, it's not a big deal. It's pretty easy. But there are a few moments in my life, my seminary career, especially when I had the dean of the school as my teacher for a theological class, and he's like, man, you must have worked really hard on this paper. I can tell you spent all semester working on it. I was like, bro, I spent 3 days. 3 days. I got a perfect score on it. I was like, you probably didn't read it, man, because I'm sure there are all kind of grammatical errors. But I was happy with the grade I got, but I was also very content with getting something that I did not deserve or earn. But what would happen if I got what I didn't deserve? What would happen if you said you didn't really spend all the time on this test or on this paper you're supposed to? You didn't actually do the checks you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to basically check in periodically and say, here's what I've done, here's what I've turned in, here's my topic. I didn't do any of that stuff. I was just like, yeah, I'll get it to you. You know, it's just how life is busy, that kind of stuff. I brought them donuts because you bribe teachers with donuts. It works. And then I showed up, and I gave them the paper, and it was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, it looks like I did a good job. So would we be happy with a world, or maybe just your life, because let's be honest, most people don't care about what's going on in the world, but you care about what's going on in your life. I care about what's going on in my life. Would I be happy with a life where everything that I worked towards, or everything that motivated me, I earned the just reward? Well, tonight we're going to talk about three people who got exactly what they deserve. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to, I almost said Mordecai. Esther chapter 7. We're going to read basically 7, 1 through 10. Then we're going to drop down to 8. It's going to be 1 through 2. Sound good? Let the games begin. All right, so it says, that's right, cool. So the king and Haman went in to feast with Queen Esther. And on the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king said to Esther, I got to read it from here because I'm going to mess up. The king said to Esther, where are we? Oh, what is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to half of my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. Then Queen Esther answered, well, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish. All right. And my people for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent. For our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king. Then King Ahasuerus said to the Queen Esther, who is he and where is he? Who has dared to do this? And Esther said, a foe and an enemy. This wicked Haman. Then Haman was terrified before the queen and the king. Now, some of y'all might be like, what is going on? So here's what happened yesterday in the story, not in our lives, but yesterday in the story, Queen Esther basically had a little brunch with King Xerxes. We're going to call him Xerxes instead of Ahasuerus. We like the Greek names, just saying. So King Xerxes and Haman. Haman is basically number 2 guy in the Persian nation, right? So Haman's got it out for the Jewish people because of a guy named Mordecai. Mordecai wouldn't bow, and so Haman said, I'm going to kill all you people. But he basically took a year. He offered the king $190 million in silver to kill all the Jewish people. So, all right, we're caught up. Awesome. So we have this meeting. Haman goes home. Haman says, I'm so tired of Mordecai. Haman's wife says, you know what? Look, if Mordecai is Jewish, you might have some issues. And Haman's just kind of like, interesting. Well, the next day comes. They go to this meal, and the king says, all right, listen, Esther, you came up to me, you know, I extended the golden scepter to you. You didn't die. You said you'd give me the request. Then you fed me, which is, I appreciate that. Now it's the next day. What's up? What's going on? And so Esther says, hey, look, my request is very simple. I just want you to spare my life, which I'm sure the king's thinking, who would dare to threaten the life of my queen? To threaten the life of the queen is to threaten the life of the king. Because the king and the queen are synonymous. That makes no sense. You threaten the life of the king. You threaten Persia. That's dumb. It's not smart. And I'm sure Haman, as he's sitting there, is just like, who would ever do that? What an idiot! What a fool! That is a terrible idea. But then you know how sometimes people they start talking and then they have that dramatic pause, like they breathe. I don't do that long pause. Like I just speak really quickly. But they have that pause. I imagine Haman in his thoughts thinking, man, this is a terrible person. Like, look, we're going to take them out. I got you, King Xerxes. Not a big deal. And then Queen Esther continues speaking, and she says, yeah, and the lives of my people as well. And Haman starts to think, oh, hold on a second now. Because this is the moment right here where Queen Esther, after being married for over 5 years to the king, says, hey, I'm Jewish. Yes. That is exactly Haman's probably thoughts, and he probably also relieved himself by accident. He realized all of a sudden, oh, snap. That issue that I wrote out where I said I wanted to get rid of a people group, and he didn't tell the king which people group it was. He just said, hey, they're doing things that don't really align with your law, with your word, and look, they're just a nuisance. Let's just get rid of them, and I'll pay you a lot of money. The king's just like, that's fine. Take care of the problem. Put money in the treasury. Thank you, sir. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Now, Haman realizes, oh, I just threatened the life of the queen. Oh. And so how does the king respond? Well, he says, well, who is this person? Who would dare do this? And Queen Esther, it's like, you're like sitting at a meal with 3 people. Queen Esther's just like, that guy. Right there. I can imagine Haman's like, what'd you say? It wasn't me. It was you, bro. And so what happens? I don't even know why I brought this up here. I can't do both at the same time. Well, in verse 7 it says, and the king arose in his wrath from the wine, drinking, and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm was determined against him by the king, you think. And the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine, as Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. And the king said, will he even assault the queen in my presence? In my own house? In my house? Out of all the places. As the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Well, things just got real really fast, right? So let's talk about what happened. King Xerxes. How many of y'all ever got spanked when you were kids? Anybody got spankings? Let's just be honest. Spankings, yeah, we call whoopings sometimes. All right, put your hands down. Put your hands down. Like, you know when you get in trouble, you can put your hand down, man. I know it's a hard life. I understand. You know when you do something bad and your parents are like, all right, look, go get the belt. And you're like, okay, all right, I'm going to go get. But you do it lethargically and slow, like you got a limp leg, like you do it all slow and stuff. Now, you know you're in trouble when your parents are sitting down. They're sitting down and they hop up to go get it themselves. Because that's the moment when you realize your backside is about to change colors. Like, your life is about to be destroyed. Those are the moments for me where I thought to myself, I'm okay with running away. Like, I can fish. Like, I'm a pretty good cook. I can make great Cheerios and lasagna. That's all I knew how to do. That's all I had as a kid. But I had it. All right? I couldn't grocery shop, but I had those things. But in my little kid mind, I was like, look, it's not worth it. When your mom gets up, runs to go get the belt, that means your dad's going to get it also. Like, oh, it's just not good. That's the situation Haman's in right now. Because the king gets up and runs out. First of all, king, have you noticed that King Xerxes, whenever he wants something, someone comes to him, they come and basically they say, okay, look, we're attending the king, we're going to take care of this. When a king gets up to handle something, it's a big deal. So Haman is just like, I'm going to die. It's going to be terrible. So he gets on his knees and he's begging Queen Esther. He's like, please have forgiveness on me. Like, look, I'm sorry. I messed up big time. Like, I messed up a lot. I understand. And the king happens to walk in and you know when people get upset, like, first of all, guys, don't talk to a bigger guy's girl because it just doesn't work out well for you. The king sees Haman on the ground and basically kneeling in front of the queen. He's just like, you going to lay your hands on her also? First you want to kill her, now you want to, you're done. You're done. And how do we know this? Well, if we go back really quick, it says, as the word left the mouth of the king, that's crazy. It's like he was saying it, and the men were like, got it. As the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Now, most of y'all probably haven't watched executions in your life, and if you have, I'm sorry, that's strange. But most executions, when they're going to kill somebody, especially like an actual legitimate execution, they'll cover the person's head, which is basically a way of saying, look, you're going to die. And so what happens to Haman? They covered his head. Why? Because he's going to die. Let's continue on. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, and I just wonder if this guy's just sitting there just chilling, watching the entire story, eating like a chicken leg, just like, He did what? Got him. But one of the eunuchs in attendance of the king said, moreover, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose word saved the king. Like, that man didn't have to say that. He didn't have to add on Mordecai saved the king. The king knew that. The story was reminded of him yesterday, remember? But he said, Mordecai, who saved the king, by the way, he saved your life, is standing 50 cubits high. That's 75 feet high. And the king said, hang him on that. Like, without hesitation. It's like, yeah, hang him on that thing right there. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the wrath of the king abated. Well, that's unfortunate. Life is sad. Yes. The story's not over yet, though. I don't know why we're clapping. We're not done. There's so much good stuff that's going to happen. Hold on. So clearly, Haman died, right? He died on the gallows, or basically, you've seen the Wild West movies, or basically Pirates of the Caribbean, where they make this huge wooden thing, and where they have basically the different nooses coming down. That's what that is, right? So it's a public display. They're usually not 75 feet tall. That's a 7-story building. That's taller than that basketball court out there. Like, that's a big building. And yet Haman had this massive structure built, why? For one little Jewish man. One guy. He built this massive thing because he wanted to show off to everybody else, you don't mess with me. You don't get in the way of who I am. I'm unstoppable. Well, he was stopped. Just saying, right? He was stopped. But here's a question for you. What the heck? I feel like we're missing some things. We're missing some slides. There we go. That's what I wanted to know. What was so special about Haman? It's like we went to the last slide real quick. What was so special about Haman? Nothing, in all honesty. Haman was just the number 2 guy in the nation. He was just a guy who was trying to do his own thing. He was a guy who basically said, look, king, I can help you out. I can give you money. So his actions weren't really that bad, right? But what were his motives? What motivated his actions? Racism is actually really good. Way to remember the history. That's good. We weren't even here all the weeks of it. Yeah, that is true. That's actually true. Because Haman was actually delineated, or basically his great ancestor was somebody who was basically destroyed by King Saul. And King Saul, basically his descendant was Mordecai. So that's phenomenal that you remember that. But Haman basically said, you know what? I want people to recognize my power. I want people to recognize who I am. I want to be the special one. I want to be the one who's set apart. I want everybody to look at me and say, you know what? I'm going to bow down to you because you're important. His motives were all about himself, all focused on himself, so much so, think about this. You've got to be pretty narcissistic to want to genocide an entire people group because one person didn't bow down to you. Like, who does that? Why not have a conversation with the guy like, hey, man, look, we have this establishment, like, look, just bow in front of the other people. I know you don't really respect me because you're Jewish, but just bow before the other people because you're going to basically spoil the bunch. We can't have that, all right? Sound good? Thanks, Mordecai. I appreciate it. Do your thing. No, that's not what he did. He said he decided in his mind to kill him. You got to have some serious issues if you say, you know what, I don't like this guy. I'm going to kill him right off the bat, actually murder him. It makes no sense because his motives made no sense. His motives were wrong. His motives were evil. Because his motives were evil, he reaped the reward of his motives. Hopefully this does only just one. Hey, there we go. Praise God. Haman had and acted on his evil motives, right? But the story's not over yet. Haman's dead, or he's probably dead by now, hanging up there, just like twitching and that kind of stuff. But what happens to Queen Esther and to Mordecai and the Jewish people and Queen Xerxes or Ahasuerus, depending on how you want to say his name? Like, what happens to them? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me continue the story. So it says, on that day, King Ahasuerus gave to Queen Esther the house of Haman. Haman was loaded. Y'all remember that? Like, y'all remember that? He had a lot of money. All right, just wanted y'all to know that. Cool. So gave to Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was to her. So basically, Esther said, hey, by the way, this is my uncle. So this guy's Jewish also. And I'm sure Ahasuerus was like, hold the phone. What is going on right now? My wife's Jewish. This old guy's Jewish. Like, who? Anybody else? Like, eunuchs, y'all Jewish? Anybody else? You can tell me now. I mean, I'm here. Like, I got food. We just killed a guy, you know, like. Anybody else? No? Okay, cool. We continue the story. And the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So here's what happened. King Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, realized something very important that we mentioned last week. Mordecai was a Jewish man. Mordecai had no logical reason for wanting to save the life of a Persian king, because the Persians had basically taken the land of the Israelites. It makes no sense for him to want to save the life of a foreign king, especially when they're always taught foreign kings and foreign officials are people you shouldn't basically submit yourself to because they serve foreign gods. And yet, for some reason, Mordecai made the decision to save the life of the king. But then, and that's already noted, right? That's why basically he said, okay, you know what? I'm going to give him this great stuff. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. But Esther's another story. For 5 years, the king had a queen who could have at any point said, you know what, I'm going to destroy the king's life. I'm going to try and kill him because he's the enemy of my people. Like, she's in the right spot. If somebody wanted to take out the president of the United States of America, being his wife is a pretty good spot to start. Just saying. Just saying. You find out what he's allergic to, slip a little pill, all of a sudden he's gone. Like, what happened? You know how he is with his chocolate. He just can't refuse it, you know. Wanted that souffle. I'm serious. Some people just they just can't turn certain things down. And yet, Queen Esther was the one, if you remember this, Queen Esther was the one who reported to the king, there is a plot on your life. And this man Mordecai is the one who told me, it's been verified. The eunuchs have verified it. There's a plot in your life. And so the king realizes something. The motives of Mordecai and the motives of Queen Esther are way above the motives of his number 2 guy, Haman. Because their motives weren't to glorify themselves or make their kingdom better. Their motives are simply this: I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to try and preserve a life. I'm going to try and save a life rather than making my lifestyle maybe better. Because let's say that they got rid of the king and a new Babylonian king came in. Not Babylonian, Persian. A new Persian king came in, and maybe he wasn't as strong or as charismatic or as powerful as King Xerxes. Maybe the Jewish Israelite people were able to rise up and basically supplant this king. Maybe. But none of those maybes took place. Why? Because that wasn't what was in the forefront of the people's minds. That wasn't their desire. Their thought was simply this right here: I'm going to do the right thing. I've been put in a position where I can preserve someone's life, where I can save someone's life, so I'm going to do it. Even if this person is potentially my enemy, potentially not on the best terms with my people group, maybe it's not going to be the best thing for me, but I know that doing the right thing is doing the right thing. So I'm going to do it. And what did the king do? Well, he rewarded them. And so I look at this story and I think to myself, first of all, it's a really cool story, because if you continue it on, actually, Esther goes back to the king and he's like, "What's up? What do you want?" And she said, "Hey, just letting you know, he actually made a law saying that we're going to kill off all the people, so that law's still in effect." And the king says, "Here, take my ring, my signet ring, and you can write my name, not Mordecai's name. You can write my name on anything involving the Jewish people and stamp it." And remember, we said that, hey, anytime the Persian king puts a law into place, it's there forever. So all of a sudden, he's putting a lot of trust into Esther and Mordecai, because he said, you know what? These people are faithful. They've got the right motives. And so what did they do? Well, they did that, killed a lot of people off as well, but they basically saved the Jewish people. In fact, when they took care of a lot of the enemies of the Jews, King Xerxes comes up and says, "Hey, you killed X number of people. It's like 500 people. Anybody else you need to take care of?" And they're like, "Yeah, there's a few of them." And it's crazy. He's like, "Get it done. Do what you need to do." Like, how amazing is that? How weird is that? And I look at this story, and I'm encouraged, especially as a Christian, because I think to myself, you know what? All throughout this story, we see that God puts people in certain places for a reason, right? There was a reason that Esther's parents died, and she became an orphan. Because if her parents hadn't died, if she hadn't become an orphan, she never would have been partnered up with Mordecai, right? Her uncle, father, uncle, whatever you want to call him at the time, because he raised her. If Mordecai hadn't been willing to tell Esther, "Hey, don't reveal that you're a Jewish person," if he hadn't said that, do you think Haman would have, knowing that the queen was Jewish, issued this decree to destroy all the Jewish people? Probably not. Probably would have tried to take care of Mordecai. But since Haman was unaware of the queen's ethnic background, he said, "I'm going to get rid of all of them, because these people of this Most High God, this Yahweh, could become an issue to my power. So I'm going to take care of them." Then we continue on. What if Mordecai hadn't been in a situation where he was sitting at the king's gate because he always sat there to hear just news about the queen, news about his niece? What if he hadn't been sitting there and overheard a situation, overheard what might happen to the king, and shared that story? There's a lot of what ifs. So many times people look at life and say, it's just chance. It's just, it just happened, or it's just luck. It's not luck. It's called providence. It's when God puts something in the place for the good of his people. It's when God does something that maybe seems just outlandish and ridiculous and just would never make sense to you, but in time you understand, God, you were watching out for me from the very beginning. And I look at the story and I say, it's so encouraging to me. But then I ask myself something, and this is a question I ask myself a lot, and this is a question we asked ourselves earlier. Their motives found him out, right? Haman's motives found him out. And what happened to him? Haman was hanged. He died 75 feet up in the air. Esther's motives found her out. Mordecai's motives found him out. But that question that you all saw earlier, what would happen if we reaped based upon our motives? And you might say, "Pastor Keel, you messed it up. It's actions." No, not actions. Because here's the thing. You can have the right action with the wrong motive. Example. How many of y'all go to church? Anybody? Anybody go to church? You should all raise your hand. You're in a church right now. Okay. That was a give me question. I'm glad you go to church. Thank you for that. Appreciate you being here. When I was in college, I used to go to this worship service called Echo at North Metro Church. About 400-something college students. And I would go, after the first week I went, I was invited to go. But after the first week, I went religiously. You want to know why I went there? Because they had really, really, really hot girls. I'm talking like they were really good looking. No. But I'm serious. I really am. I was already involved in a great college ministry where I went to school or where I went to church. I was serving with the student ministry. I was going to camps and that kind of stuff. But I happened to see this church that was maybe like 10 minutes from the university I went to, and I said, oh, my goodness. There are always more women in church than men, just letting y'all know, all right? Come on now. But I saw these women, and I said, they love God, and they look amazing. All the colors. Oh, man. Oh, this is great. God, I can work on this right here. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And it's funny because, I'll be honest with you, it was the easiest way to get guys to go to church because they would see my pictures and be like, dude, who are these girls you're hanging out with? Like, bro, they go to church. They're like, no, they don't. I'm serious. They're like, no, they don't. Like, yes, they really do. Mike has seen. They were just the normal, amazing Christian girls. It's funny. People like this. So some of the students looked at my pictures from Facebook and they're like, who are these people you're hanging out with? And I matured out of that, but I was just like, I'll be honest with you. They were my friends when I was in college. They just were. They were the people that I hung out with, that I did life with. And when I first met these young ladies, I wasn't trying to hang out with them because I was trying to develop Christian relationships. I was just like, can I just look at your eyes? Can I just smell your hair? You just, wow. Wow, you're amazing. I'm just being honest. I'm being honest. They were absolutely gorgeous. Hold on. Shh. So, y'all, I was in church every Thursday night at 8 o'clock because that's when we started, right? I did the right thing. But my motive wasn't to glorify God, to bring people closer to Him, to develop discipleship-based relationships. It wasn't at all. It was to get to know these young ladies who I knew that I would never actually want to pursue because I didn't have the desire to date at the time. I was just like, oh, it's cool to get to know girls and hang out with them, that kind of stuff. Now, as I grew in my walk with the Lord, I realized, you know what? These people are more than just something cool to look at. They're actually really cool people as well. And I started to not just enjoy having them around me, but I enjoyed doing life alongside them. But my motives when I first started going to that particular church were completely wrong. And there are so many of you all in here right now who I look at and I wonder to myself, what motivates them to show up on a Wednesday night? What motivates them to show up on a Sunday morning? What motivates you? Because the action, you might say, look, I go to church and I tithe and I read my Bible and I go to Bible studies and I go to FCA, and I'll say, who cares? Just being honest with you. Who cares? So many great actions without a motive that's proper and in right alignment, it's actually worse for the kingdom of God. Because those are the people who you'll look at and say, that person's a fake Christian. You're the reason I don't want to go to church. You're the reason I can't stand Christians because you're hypocritical. And it's not an accidental hypocritical. It's just you're blatant about it. You just want to live two lives. And people see that. And so my question for you today is this. What motivates you to do what you do in life? And what would happen if you reaped based upon your motives? Now, when I say reap, some of y'all probably didn't grow up agriculturally. Explain what reaping is. If I decide I'm going to basically make a tomato garden, right? So I put up my stakes and that kind of stuff, and I till the soil, and I basically research, okay, here's how you make tomatoes, and I get the garden in the right spot where the sun, I have the right moisture, water coming in, and that kind of stuff, and I plant watermelon seeds. My tomatoes are going to be awesome, right? Wait. I did? Really? So you're telling me that if I do all this work to develop tomatoes, and I research how to develop tomatoes, but I put watermelons in the ground, I won't get tomatoes? Huh. So here's the thing. How many of us, hold on. How many of us are saying we're trying to reap something out of life, we're trying to develop, we're trying to establish something out of life, but our motives are something totally different? Oh, something to think about, isn't it, right? Oh, snap. That was great. But it's true. It really is, y'all. It really is. And I'm having to challenge myself with this, and I ask myself, okay, Akil, what are you pursuing with your life right now? Like, what are you investing into? What are you pouring into? And what is your desire? And does it glorify God, or is it just glorifying yourself? Because one day, we're all going to stand before the actual King of all creation, of all existence. And he's going to look at us and say, okay, you know what? What motivated you? What made you do what you decided to do? No, don't tell me what you did. Don't tell me what you did. What was your motivation? As a Christian, it's very simple. I acknowledge the fact that, you know, without Jesus in my life is pretty much worthless. Because I had a great plan for my life. I was going to do great things, and I was going to basically escape the problem of humanity. And so I realized something. I am the problem of humanity. My sin is the problem of humanity, and I can never escape my sin. Because my sin is something I'm born with and I grow in because it's natural for me. But I needed something supernatural to come into my life, and that's Jesus Christ coming in and saving me, resurrecting me, setting me free. And how did he do that? Well, he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, laid his life down on a cross, and 3 days later he raised it back up because he said, you know what? You're worth it. He said, the price that comes from you sinning against me, sinning against my Father, is separation from God forever. Now, some people say, oh, you know what? Like, hell's, okay, people, they just stop existing. They just die and you're gone. Let's explain something about, first of all, let's talk about what God gives you. When you choose to acknowledge who God is and your motives are simply, look, God, I want to honor you, I want to glorify you, I want to love you. I don't really know how to do it, so help me figure it out. God says, all right, I can work with that. And one day he'll say, you know what? You messed up a lot. You cried a lot. You wanted to quit a lot. But you know what? Your motives were right. You chose to follow me. You were redeemed by my son's blood, and you lived it out. Welcome home. Then there'll be those who say, look, I did all these things, God. I was a good person. I helped the poor. I did charity. I did blah, 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 blah. And God's going to say, what was your motive, though? Your motive was to glorify yourself. Your motive was to honor yourself. Your motive was to make yourself your own God. And here's the thing, you're not a God. Look up the definition of a God if you don't believe it. It's fascinating how simple some things are. But you're not a God. But because your motive was not for my kingdom, not to help grow my people, not to grow closer to me, because you basically chose to ignore my word, ignore who I am, I'm going to allow you to be separated from me forever. Because that was your choice on earth. Your motivation on earth was simply, I want nothing to do with God. And I'm going to allow you to reap from your motives. And so you'll be separated from love for all eternity. You'll never experience love. Now, yes, God still loves those who will go to hell. That's crazy to me to think about. But they'll never feel or experience God's love. They'll never experience hope, trust, peace, happiness, joy. All of it is gone. It's a place where basically the fire burns forever and ever. That's literally what Scripture says in Revelation 20. The fire goes up forever and ever. And yet, there are so many people who are going to go there because they don't have the right motives. And as a pastor, as your friend, as a brother in Christ, those of you who are my brothers and sisters in Christ, or just as somebody who you know, who you've seen up in the front of you if you're just someone who's not a Christian, look, I want to let you know something. What motivates you in life will definitely dictate where you go in the afterlife. What you pursue with your life today will dictate where you end up going in the afterlife. You can spend eternity with God. You can spend eternity outside of God's presence. But the choice is yours. I can't make that choice for you. Your mom can't make that choice for you. Your dad can't make that choice for you. You can't say, oh, I know all about the Bible. I go to church all the time. I'm in Sunday school. I'm in a Bible study. I do all these things. Oh, who cares about what you do? What did God do inside of you? Has God transformed your life? Has he transformed your motives? Because if he hasn't, what you're doing is just to glorify yourself. And that's the first problem that we had. That's the original sin. We want to glorify ourselves. And we're forever paying the consequences for it. Except for those who've made the choice to acknowledge who Jesus is. So if you've never made the choice to acknowledge who Jesus Christ is, I want you to just talk to me, to Mike, to Kimberly, to Tony, to Elizabeth, to any of our adults that are in here. Just come talk to us. And you might say, look, I don't really know if I made a decision or not, but it's great to know that you don't know. It's great. Instead of saying, I made a decision, I'm good, I'm going to go to heaven, everything's great. And then you're one of the people that Jesus says, yeah, so you said you did a lot of stuff for me, but I don't know you. I never knew you. Because you pursued something that you thought was Jesus, but it really wasn't. It was just you. You pursued yourself, your own righteousness, your own religion, instead of pursuing the perfect, holy God who loves you, who laid his life down for you, who picked it back up and said, look, follow me, and I will take care of you for all of eternity. So I challenge you all today to get real with God and understand that one day your motives are going to see you out, and God's going to give you exactly what you deserve for what motivated you through your life.